Hey there, folks, Arlyeon here.
And Lovi.
And welcome to another Crit Hit Reviews. On this week's episode, we'll be covering Hunter Studios' Lost Castle.
A fantasy-flavored RPG beat-em-up, albeit with a healthy helping of roguelite elements.
But is Lost Castle a worthwhile adventure, or will it leave players feeling like it's a lost cause?
Firstly, while it has full support for both keyboard and gamepad, the latter is preferred as it tends to benefit the nature of the gameplay better. The control scheme is simple. You have buttons for both normal and heavy attacks, jumping, magic, and to swap or use a selected item. As mentioned earlier, Lost Castle takes to both RPG and roguelike mechanics, having a traditional skill tree system interlaced with a nice dash of, "Oh man, first boss? Time to level because I'm dead AF." Basically, if you want to get anywhere, you have to avoid dying, seeing as how it puts you right back at the start. But the game gets the slightest bit easier each time you do, since that's the only way you can use your acquired souls to upgrade your skills. Do be careful though, as any unused souls will be lost when you continue your playthrough, or at least until you unlock a skill that minimizes that effect. Don't get too attached to your material possessions either, and feel free to waste your gold away on gambling for boosts, because you lose all of that too. Not to mention that the gear you're offered to choose from at the start is quite pitiful. This can be remedied by a few skills, placing a blacksmith, an alchemist, and a thief within the starting hub, to provide you with weapons, potions, and chests respectively. This would be a good time to note that these potions aren't necessarily beneficial to your character, and you'll find yourself gambling on whether or not to actually use them at first. Effects are often unknown until you try them, at which point it's too late, since a lot of the effects will last until you die. Again, the skill trees are your friend for this. In terms of equipment, drops are randomized, so pray for the RNG gods to tip the odds in your favor. The randomization doesn't only apply to drops, as you'll often find vendors, or sometimes a cute monster with slots for eyes, that won't tell you exactly what you may get from them if you end up giving them your gold, hence the aforementioned gambling. If you're lucky, you may stumble upon an actual store where you can check out all the items and choose what to buy, but whether you decide to save up just in case, or take your chances is entirely up to you. Rarely, Arlyeon encountered this dude once in 19 hours of playtime. You may find a lad willing to add an enchantment to your equipment for gold. Furthermore, you can unlock better drops by beating bosses. Bosses, like every other enemy, and the layout of the castle, are randomized, so you may find yourself in a sticky situation if you encounter one that you know you don't do well with early on in your adventure. This can also get a bit frustrating as you progress, since there will inevitably be repetition when all you want is the achievement and unlocks that come with defeating a new boss. After you clear the game, new options open up too, including multiple endings and a new NPC in the starting hub to optionally increase the difficulty to Nightmare mode. Fun stuff if you're up to it. And by fun stuff I mean getting your ass kicked by the newer, tougher enemies. Not to say that it's just challenge for the sake of it, however, as it's actually quite rewarding. In addition to gaining extra souls from enemies, the true/final ending and boss can only be accessed by braving the nightmare, so have at it.
So it's pretty helpful that Lost Castle has a co-op mode with GASP support for both couch and online co-op, since that provides a few more warm bodies to throw at the castle's hordes. Considering that the game's defensive options vary by weapon, and a few of them are fairly underwhelming in the face of the attack patterns of some of the late game bosses and their movement speeds, the fact that you can have party members present to revive you is pretty nice. Well, so long as they don't get knocked off your body while they're trying to get you to rise from your grave. Or one of the other designated meat shields tramples your still fresh corpse, since walking over or being knocked into a body that's being revived will also interrupt the process. Sure, it makes sense, but it does mean you'll need to pray that your teammates know how to properly kite the enemies away from your body instead of leading conga lines across it. Story-wise, Lost Castle's prologue is fairly to the point, showcasing a local earl's efforts to bind a number of demons to his will, only to mess up so severely that he may as well be a local man in a Florida paper. That, and the aftermath as he winds up on the medieval equivalent of a milk carton and his castle ends up looking like a halfway house from hell complete with demonic murder hobos. With disaster on the horizon and the promise of treasures both earthly and otherworldly up for grabs, it's basically a magnet for wandering adventurers. Though your introduction to the castle is more captured by the local goblin infestation than heroically kicking down doors. Honestly, when it comes to Lost Castle's storyline, I actually found myself enjoying it because it took into account the expendability of the protagonists and the looping nature of the game itself. In fact, successfully clearing the final boss doesn't just finish the current run of the game, it also serves to kickstart a whole new arc of the storyline and provides a decent explanation for why you have to continue rolling up new characters. I also found it a nice touch that while the situations do tend to escalate, both the ensuing arcs and their respective plot twists don't come out of left field. Lost Castle isn't a narrative-heavy masterwork, but what is there is fairly solid. It also benefits from a very solid visual style as well, both in the sense of the overall clarity of its designs and UI, as well as its bright and visually appealing cartoonish style. Its player designs are a charming melting pot of random anime-esque traits in a chibi package, and one which is actually influenced cosmetically by the vast array of armor and weapons that can be found. The enemy design is satisfying, with both common mobs and the bosses being fairly distinctive. Now when it comes to the sound department, I found it decent. There was never a track that got on my nerves, and I found myself able to relax and enjoy my wholesale slaughter, especially given that the basic combat sound effects were also nice.
As someone who tends to avoid 2D games and has never played a roguelike before, I can say that this really was a fun experience. I've only played it in co-op mode, but I don't see myself really enjoying single player as repetition gets to me, and that isn't much of an issue when you have friends doing crazy shit with their equipment. For me, Lost Castle is a solid hit.
As for my opinion on the game, I thoroughly enjoyed it. While there were a few mechanics which irritated me, like some of the defense options for certain weapons being less viable than others, especially against certain bosses, I did feel that made for a solid experience, enough to be a hit. That said, co-op is where the game really shines, and it's definitely worthwhile to plunge into Lost Castle with some friends, and even just to see if there's any games open, since it does allow for just random co-op. As ever, thanks for watching till the end. We hope to hear from you in the comments, and if you enjoyed this, feel free to like, subscribe, and share this with people you think might be interested.
Also, if you happen to be looking for some company, check out our Discord server dedicated to connecting indie developers and gamers. A link in the description below.
Throw your daggers.